and welcome to Microsoft Expert Speak. We have a special guest today with us, and I extend a very warm welcome to our country's National Cybersecurity Coordinator, Lieutenant General Dr. Rajesh Pant, for a conversation with us on cybersecurity. It's a privilege to be in conversation with General Pant. He's a well-known figure, but I'm still taking the liberty and opportunity to introduce him. General Pant's national role is part of National Security Council of India at Prime Minister's office. He's an international renowned soldier and scholar with 42 years of experience in Indian Army, especially in the field of electronic warfare, geointelligence, and cyber warfare in related areas. He's responsible for coordinating all cybersecurity activities across multiple sectors. He also holds a PhD in information security metrics, and previously he was the head of Army's cyber training establishment for 3 years. And he served in the Army Signal Corps for 41 years and was honored 3 times by the President of India for distinguished service of the highest order. We are very privileged to have him here. Today, our world is simultaneously battling both the pandemic as well as an equally relentless assault from cyber criminals. And what we have seen is that these attacks are not just increasing in size and scale, but also in sophistication. In fact, Ministry of Home Affairs reported nearly 1.16 million cyber attacks in India in 2020, thrice as many as 19 and 20 times compared to 60. So we can see the scale growing. Given this context, the big question is, how can we build a cyber resilient digital India? How do we design and use technology that puts privacy, security, and internet safety at first? How do we look at cyber policies? And how do we build awareness and skill people in cybersecurity areas? In this session, we'll seek to answer some of these questions around creating the right ecosystem to secure India. Let's dive in here. General Pant, let me kick this off with you by requesting you to share an overview of the cyber threat landscape in India. Specifically, how has it evolved since the start of the pandemic? And what do you see as the biggest security threats to governments, businesses, and consumers?
In school, this question of yours, Keshav, we would have termed it as an essay type of question. Ask me so many things in one sentence about the impact of the pandemic and the threat surface of India. But I suppose this is the most important aspect as to what is the threat that we are facing at the moment. At the outset, let me firstly compliment Microsoft for having this event in the National Cyber Security Awareness Month of October. And the theme this year is Do Your Part, #Be Cybersmart. And this is a very important theme because at the end of the day, what we find is that the human is the weakest link in the cyber kill chain. So that is why we are stressing at a national level in this month, you please do your part. Don't get outsmarted by the cyber criminals because the cyber crime is increasing as we speak. As you know, there are about 4 million malware detected every day. And India is one of the most cyber attacked nations in the world. Of course, one of the reasons for that is that we have a large attack surface with 1.5 billion phones and more than 700 million internet users. But the point is that we have to overcome this human weakness aspect. And now I can come to the question that you asked about the impact of the pandemic and what is the threat that we are facing. So firstly, the things were not very good even before the pandemic. Let me tell you, in cyberspace, and the reasons for that were that it's an international sort of a crime syndicate that carries out these attacks. And my mind goes back 4 years to the Cosmos Bank attack, where within a period of 2 hours, we found that from 28 different nations, there was an ATM cash out. So that is the scale at which these international criminals have conspirated. And unfortunately, the international laws are very weak. Whether it is the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty or the Letter of Rogatory that is also used, and you being a legal background, you would understand that international laws also do not help much in cyberspace. So being borderless, being not protected by cyber laws. In fact, let me tell you, even at the United Nations level, it has taken almost 15 years to create 11 non-binding norms for responsible behavior by states in cyberspace. And there's been a series of meetings of the UN group of government experts and the open-ended working group, etc. So add to that is, the dark web and the anonymization that it offers, and finally the aspect of cryptocurrency, which over the last 5 years is now being used for exchange of, this crime. So this was the situation just before the pandemic, and cybercrime was already there. But what the pandemic did, of course, was that it created this digital transformation where we were forced to go online. That was one major change that happened. And the second was it created that aspect of fear, which was exploited by the cyber criminals. The number of attacks that went up was that you would recall that there were some apps also that were created, like the PM Cares Fund, etc. And the money that was to be given for the Prime Minister's relief, that also was being exploited by the criminals. So what are the lessons learned from this pandemic? First is that cyber crime became an essential service. Now my mind is going back to around March last year, around 26th of March, when the first lockdown was imposed. And there, as a nation, we invoked what is called as the National Disaster Management Act, the NDMA of 2005, where certain essential services are laid down, like police and fire and things like that. Cybersecurity was not one of them. But then we realized that in order to conduct governance, we had to rely on our digital infrastructure. And the digital infrastructure had to be protected by the cybersecurity people in terms of, the CERT and the Security Operations Center, etc. So that is one of the first few things that we realized, that cybersecurity is as essential a service as, police, fire, and ambulance, etc. So that is the first thing that happened, and officially in the Ministry of Home Affairs, this came about, that cybersecurity became an essential service. The second aspect was that how do we deal with this pandemic? It was in the category of a radical uncertainty. And radical uncertainties are marked by two elements. One is that you have no control, and second is you have no information. So the way the nation dealt with it, I think, is very commendable, that we went on the offensive. So if there was no control, we assumed control. So we did lockdown, unlockdown, and if there's no information, we created information by using apps such as Atmanirbhar Telecom and tracing, etc. And at the end of it, when all this is over, and you see globally how people have handled the pandemic, I think this is going to be a classic case study as to how, as a nation, we have gone about handling this and have come out on top. And don't forget what happened 100 years back. Out of the 50 million people who unfortunately passed away in the Spanish flu, 12 million were Indians. 24% of the casualties 100 years back were Indians. And look at the way we are now, situation is much, much better. So as a whole of nation approach, as a essential service, this came about. Then another thing that went in our favor was the use of the infrastructure that we had. Fortunately, 2015, we had launched our, Digital India initiatives. So the BharatNet, etc., was in place. And then very large-scale national public platforms had been created. So I must commend both the MeitY and the DOT part for having created these platforms so that the governance could take place. And of course, the health sector, etc., could be governed. And dual use, I'll give you one more example. In our scheme of smart cities, we have a plan for about 100 smart cities that has a command and control center. So that command and control center that had been created for the smart cities, whichever ones had been created, was immediately converted to the command and control center for the pandemic. Then, of course, the education and awareness part, and that was carried out. And cybercrime, yes, it did increase. In the words of the NSA, it increased 500% because of the pandemic, and how they played in our emotions and fear, etc. I mean, we saw the vulnerable sectors. Government, of course, was the most vulnerable. Maximum came, the government sector. as far as the threat was concerned. The telecom sector was targeted as a nation. The financial sector was targeted. Then transportation, we found a number of attacks, and of course, the energy sector. The vectors that were utilized since Microsoft, we're talking to some technical people, we had the security misconfiguration that was one of the maximum vectors that was used. Email, clickbaiting and spoofing and clickjacking was used. Then sensitive data exposure was there. Directory listing was exploited, and of course the standard SQL injections and the cross-site scripting, etc. Surprisingly, the outbound connection, that is from where the last IP, the attacks come from, if I may say so, we found that more than 30% were from the US. And this is something that I'm sure all in this field will understand, that the way these attackers come is through 3 or 4 hops. And the last hop is a country which has, very good relations, firstly, which is mostly a democracy and which has strong privacy laws. So, even if you get the last IP and it is a Azure or a Google Cloud server in the US, it is not easy to get the information out of them because there are a lot of other clients and they have privacy rights. So this is just to share our experience that, countries like USA, Netherlands, Germany, which have strong privacy laws, were utilized as the last hop for the attacks. So by and large, there was fortunately no major impact on our critical sector as far as these last almost 1 year and 10 months have gone. Yes, financial crimes did increase. Ransomware, I have the figures, the ones that have been reported to CERT-In, and I can share with you that there was a 150% increase in ransomware attacks. And fortunately, we have managed to avoid any major cyber attacks or threats. And that is one of the reasons why you may recall in June, the new rankings for this year came out of the Global Cybersecurity Index. And this is an index which is made by the International Telecommunications Union under the UN. So that is a different process. They go through everything as to what are your legal processes, what are the technological processes, what is the cooperation you have, framework, etc. And then based on that, this was the good news that we jumped from 47 to number 10. So it was a jump of 37 places. And that is a reflection of, how we've managed, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this continues. But by and large, these are some of the thoughts on the impact of the pandemic and how we faced it, and what are the major threats like, what is the status at the moment.
Thank you, General Pant. I think you covered so many critical areas of the ecosystem play that you outlined. I think the first thing which is core to protecting is everyone must take their own responsibility. I think that goes to, because security is not just limited to certain sections of the experts or people who are responsible, but I think we all have responsibilities. I think the fact that cyber criminals are becoming more organized and well resourced is a big learning for everyone to understand how debilitating cyber attacks have become as compared to simple disruption. And I think you're right about the fact that we need global harmonization. We need for nations and industry to come together. Otherwise, criminals will always stay ahead of the game, and I think we'll be doing catch up. But largely, I think what India has learned in the pandemic, both creating digital assets, but also lessons, how do you secure them? How do you build capabilities in the nation has been super useful. In that context, General Pant, what are the top 3 to 5 critical steps that are needed to secure India with resiliency and that scale? With India, you mentioned about just the scale is just so large, and we have to look at billion plus mobile users and broadband users. It's just numbers are just growing. And under your leadership, we're seeing a lot of work underway to strengthen India's security posture and policies. And congratulations for India to kind of rise up in the ranking that shows that we are on the right path. Could you elaborate a bit on the national cyber strategy and the role of the public-private partnerships in there?
Yeah, Keshav, both are very important. What you said, the PPP part and of course the strategy part. So you see, the present system under which we are functioning is based on the 2013 framework that we created. It's an excellent cybersecurity policy, but somewhere it lacked in the implementation. For example, we wanted to train 5 lakh cyber skilled persons within a year, but even today, I don't know where they are and what is their qualification. Then we had a National Cyber Coordination Center, which is a great concept for threat prevention, but somehow because of some financial problems, it's still stuck at phase 1. Although now things have moved very fast in MeitY, and I think phase 2 will be over by the end of this year. But what is required now is the National Cybersecurity Strategy, which is what we've been working on in the last 2 years, and as you know, it is in the cabinet for the final stamp. And the first thing is that we need a governance structure. See, today, if you see the way we are working under different ministries, so we've got excellent organizations. CERT-In is doing an excellent job in incident response, in cybercrime. The Indian Cybercrime Coordination Center has come up, and the transformation that has happened in the last 1 year is fantastic. They deal with that portal, cybercrime.gov.in, and they've got 7 verticals of threat analytics unit and digital forensics, etc. So that has come up under the Ministry of Home Affairs. Then education and awareness, of course, is being done through MeitY and some of the other NGOs. And cyber diplomacy division has come up in the MEA. We've created a defense cyber agency. Then there are agencies for the Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center, which is under the NTRO. So by and large, the framework is in place, but there is no central apex organization today. Or, in terms of the allocation of business rules, there is no ministry or organization to which you can say that you are responsible for cybersecurity of the nation. So so that is the first thing we have to tackle. And that is what the strategy, one of the major deliverables of the strategy is this. And if you recall, last year, the Prime Minister also, from the ramparts of Red Fort, had said that एक नई cyber suraksha की रणनीति आने वाली. So that is the first thing that we're waiting, because the difference between a policy and a strategy is that a strategy is an action-oriented plan. So it gives the objective, it gives who will deliver that objective, it gives the funding for that objective, and it gives the timelines for achieving that objective. So it's a very specific document and it covers the next 5 years. So along with this apex sort of a structure, which we need various national architectural requirements. For example, and we are already working on it. For example, if you have to report a malware today, people go to this organization called VirusTotal. VirusTotal is a Google company. It is based in Singapore, and that tells you, what is the details, what are the details of that particular virus and what it can do and where else it has been found, etc. But in the sense that VirusTotal is now getting all the data of the malware that is available in India and the organizations also, which may not be the best thing for national security. So we have created our own national malware repository. Just for your information, and people may not be aware, it is in the final phase of beta testing, and we've already got about 75 million samples in that repository, and it is going to be as good as VirusTotal. That is what I want it to be. Similarly, we are wanting to create a national threat intelligence exchange. So instead of different people getting it, we get it at a central place and then distribute it. And that central place also we have some sort of a fusion center, etc. So then the National Cyber Coordination Center project, which I said is a very prestigious project, that is the one that is going to give us the security at the gateways. So for example, if there are 200 internet gateways of all the service providers today, then at these gateways, there will be probes, which will only be seeing the metadata on a 1:1 basis. So every packet is being seen. They're not seeing the content because that is unlawful also. And from the metadata itself, you can make out as to what are the IP addresses from where some packet is coming, where is it going. So a lot of information you can get. And based on that itself, the attacks can be predicted. So if you find a large number of packets going to one particular IP address, you can say that, yes, this is likely that there is a distributed denial of service attack which may take place. And I'm just giving a example. So these are the national level structures that we are trying to create to protect our national cyberspace. Because the way let's say the 4G is now spreading to tier 2 and 3 cities, and our rural areas and our population is not that techno savvy, etc. So they'll be getting these apps, and these apps will be having malware, and they will, some harm may come, they may lose money, etc. So that is one. Second is that some of our industries, which are part of the critical sector, and a large number of private industries are part of the critical sector. Power, telecom, everything is private. And this private sector, which may not be a very big industry, mind you, may come under a cyber attack from a nation state who wants to disturb your critical infrastructure. So why should this have to bear the brunt of a nation state attack? And the government has to step in. The government has to step in to protect, the industry also, which is why the private sector is so important. So this national level sort of a threat protection, the issue of advisories, the audits, the VAPTs, etc. A lot of work has to be done. And just today only, you will hear of a press release where our CERT India has also become what is called as a CNA. CNA is a CVE numbering authority. So these vulnerabilities, common vulnerabilities and exposures, they are given a particular number. So all this while, this was done by some of the others, but then we decided to apply for the same to the MITRE framework, and there's an exam, etc. to be given. Everything is over, and we've just yesterday only got a confirmation, and the press release is going to be today. So Microsoft people are lucky. Before the press release, you're coming to know that CERT India is now going to be a CVE numbering authority. Similarly, we, in the critical sectors, like today in the telecom, we've got a very efficient cybersecurity incident response for the telecom sector. The power ministry, I must give so much of credit to them in the last couple of months, the way they've reorganized, and in all their verticals of power generation, transmission, distribution, and grid operations. Everyone, there's a security operations center for cyber. Even in the generation, they got a separate one for hydro, separate one for thermal, a separate one for non-renewable, etc. And all the CISOs have been trained, all their SOPs are in place. So the two supercritical sectors of power and telecom, we call them supercritical, because if there's no power, then everything gets stuck, and if there's no telecom, then again information flow gets stuck. So these two we have addressed immediately. And as you can see, we have taken care of a large number of attacks that are taking place. So I feel that, if, as you said, the common but differentiated responsibility, that we have a whole of nation approach, everyone has a role to play. The individual improves his cyber hygiene. The business ensures that some cybersecurity element is in place, because cybersecurity products, as you're aware, are divided into either services or products. In services, you have managed services, you have audit, you have training, etc. And in the products, it starts from the endpoint protection, and it goes up the network chain, including cloud security, and up to the enterprise, etc. So the business now has to ensure that if you're very small, then have some firewall with managed services, and then as you go up the escalation ladder, you have what is called as a security orchestration and automatic response. You have a SIEM, incident and event management. You have a security operations center. You have a threat intelligence platform, etc. So there are scales which have to be there. And I always keep saying that please don't have the IT people only doing your cybersecurity part, because it's like that judge and jury sort of thing. So they can be under the same CISO if you want, but let there be a cybersecurity cell and an IT cell, and so that it's now a very specialized job, the protection of your assets. So there's a lot to speak about, what needs to be done to secure India. But what I can assure you is that we have the national architecture in our mind as to the roadmap to which we want to go to. Depending on the funds that we get, we are putting in these pieces in the roadmap that we have in mind. And so far, we have ensured that our national cyberspace remains safe, secure, resilient, trusted, and vibrant for the nation's prosperity.
No, thank you, General Pant. I think you touched upon really from the whole policy, regulatory, to what that partnership looks like. And I think Ministry of Power example was, I think, perfect. We're really proud about the leading the front. I think all of the ministries can really learn from it. But I definitely like that the central coordination. We have so many agencies looking at cyberspace today, and we need that central authority who can really coordinate, share intelligence, and execute on the programs and deployments. And I think the the intelligence exchange that you were calling it, I think would be critical. Without having cyber threat knowledge and ability to share, you're not able to learn about how crime is evolving. And I think that is something we care about as well.
The government has approved the directive on the telecom sector. So only, we will be putting trusted products from trusted sources with effect from 15th of June this year. So there's a lot of stress that we are putting on, trusted sources, and you coming from a company that is also putting data security and user safety at the center. Now it's my turn to ask you a question. As a global tech company, what does Microsoft think about, trust?
Thank you, General Pant. Trust is very central to everything that we do to enable or empower through technology. As we firmly believe that people will not use technology they don't trust. All right, and I think that as industries scale and grow, and our technology is used by almost every sector in the country and the world, we believe that tech has to be designed with trust in mind. With when we talk of build for privacy, security, responsible AI, and then internet safety for all. And that is why we even go a step further to say, is what about technology and responsibility? Are we building technology and be responsible for it? Is something the question that we ask ourselves is not just what tech can do, but what should tech do is the question. So for us, it's a very heart of what we do as a company. We even call inside Microsoft we run on trust. So there's 6 elements that I think I would like to reflect upon. First is, we are moving out of this whole era of bolt-on security to have built-in security. That means we want to build our product and services from the ground up, from the software development life cycle, perhaps security built into the product itself. That means there's a platform and intelligence coming together. So the services and products can defend and protect themselves. Then is privacy by design. We believe that every customer have the right to keep their data private, but also that data should be in their control. For us, it's very critical that that data never becomes Microsoft data. It always remains customer data and they're under control. Compliance is another area which we believe that when we deliver cloud services, when we enable technology solutions, that they are able to adopt technology with the comfort of security and privacy, but also that we keep them compliant to all the local regulations, to regional certifications, to standards, to even international global norms. And that gives that peace of mind to customers, then they can adopt technology without having to worry about any legal compliance issues. And transparency, I believe, is one of the most discussed term in the tech world. That are the policies practices clear and accessible to everybody, and we believe that is a right of any tech user to be able to fully understand what is happening with their data, what kind of services are being provided for, and we have taken several steps to even ensure that we manage customer data, we enable access to customer data with all clarity as to the terms. So transparency is core to us. Responsible AI is something which you're aware of. You have been advocating for it. That AI and machine learning are growing areas, and I think you mentioned that when you think of threat data, humans cannot typically analyze the data. You need AI and ML to really go through the patterns and the behavior, because we are now looking at big data on cyber threat. So we believe that AI should also serve people in a fair way, without discrimination, without causing harm. So we are on a path to develop principles of responsible AI, and working with Niti Aayog in that paper that they have outlined, which is, I think, one of the finest papers we have seen. And reliability. For us, technology should not only have consistent performance, but the way it is democratized, it should be available to all at any point of time. So that is what, for us, the definition of trust in technology is. And we believe that we need to have a very strong end-to-end capabilities across identity, security, compliance, and threat management. And we are building and we are investing deeply into creating that trusted tech ecosystem. And that requires, as to your point, we work with customers, we work with our partners, we work with security industry, we work with communities, think tanks, and also government, and CERTs and offices like yourself, for us to even learn every day what does trust mean to users, and how we can enable people not fear technology adoption, but adopt with comfort and assurances that their data and their information will be safe and secure and private.
Reassuring answer, Keshav. And we have security by design, we have privacy by design, and now we have trust by design also.
Right.
If this will come out with a standard for trust by design, like they have recently come out with a very good standard for developing secure software applications, the new NIST standards. So very well put. Finally, Microsoft is a global company, and you have a lot of experience in technology and how you can contribute to the governments, etc. So with your global experience, can you share with us how technology players such as yourself can contribute towards creating a robust security ecosystem?
Absolutely, General Pant, and I think we strongly believe that we have not only an important role, but I think we feel we are accountable to the ecosystem where we are providing our technology to empower and enable people and businesses to do more. And I think I would just reflect on maybe three areas. First thing, on because it's cybersecurity and we're dealing with growing and more sophisticated cybercrime vectors, is the area of sharing and analysis of threat intelligence. That's why I think I really appreciate you talking about the exchange for threat intelligence, because it's a global issue, and no one entity, government, law enforcement, or any organization can fight cybercrime alone. And if you don't have access to threat intelligence, you are not able to develop defense mechanism, but also even offense mechanism. We can take legal action and disrupt cybercrime, right? And that is where we believe that we need to not only find important ways, trusted ways to share information that can allow us to strengthen defense, but also the response to attack is equally critical as much as the protection that we typically do. And we are committed globally, not just to build very a strong, resilient, cloud-powered security system, but the battle against cybercrime is something that is important for us. And we enable that because we have a global attack surface to map threat data. So we get 8.3 trillion threat signals a day. And that gives us a scope at a planet level to assess how new threats are evolving. And those are then, leveraged to do analytics, to harden and to allow patching, to be able to share that intelligence with our partners and governments, to search through our government security program. And we are proud that India is part of our government security program, and we have been working with the Indian government for past many years. And Digital Crimes Unit is about using that intelligence to identify where the signal came from, which nation, which city it came from, and to be able to take legal action against them. And we have worked with CBI and FBI and Department of Justice and Europol, Interpol in taking down many, many criminal networks. And that intelligence then gets shared to CERTs and many of our global partners. Second is, I think I won't elaborate more. I think we already discussed, and you rightly mentioned, trust by design is the way in which tech has to evolve if we were to gain more trust with our users and with the partners. And designing products which have security built in and privacy by design is something which is core to us. And COVID-19 actually has changed our point of view, General Pant, because as you rightly said, when security moved from offices to more vulnerable home environments, we had to rethink security altogether. Just like our government was thinking about enabling these apps for citizens to access, and that's where the zero trust architecture came in. For us to say, because we are not in very safe environments, we're using home Wi-Fi's and desktop security, you need a zero trust architecture which allows you to verify every access, every device, every person trying to gain access to account or information. And I think that has really helped us to take security from offices to security at the home office. And that has really, really helped us. And we know that average cost is reaching 4 million for per breach. And I think that is a telling sign that how much we need to then rely on not just home-based, but I think the security has to be powered by the cloud, which is leveraging threat intel. Let me end with, I think you mentioned already, capacity building, skilling, and awareness are core. If you are not aware what you should not open, how you should behave yourself on the internet, what hygiene practices you need to have. If you don't have skill sets, then criminals will take advantage, the vulnerabilities. And I think cyber skilling has been a paramount, I would say, a project for us or our aim for us, because we not only want to build more secure capabilities, but are we building security leaders? And we know that there are 1.5 million job vacancies today in India by 2025, the report we studied. And there is also a gap of women having a very low share in cybersecurity workforce. And I think there's a great opportunity as women get into more technology and engineering side that they could choose cybersecurity as their profession. And we have invested in a Cyber Siksha program working with MeitY and your offices to build capabilities in the government CISO and different officers who can get trained on both awareness, but also what steps should you take to protect. I'm very proud of the Cyber Siksha program, which we launched with MeitY and DSCI of NASSCOM to enable women engineers from underprivileged background to consider security as a profession. And we believe there's a lot to be done in both skilling, but also let me emphasize the reskilling of the current the expertise that we have that can shape and protect, because I think, as you rightly said, everyone has a responsibility. Everyone will require security expertise for organizations, to governments, to small businesses. So those are the things I believe we can contribute, and we want to do a lot more with the government and our partners to continue to build the resiliency. We don't have a 100% secure environment. It is about how fast you detect, how fast you recover, and then you mitigate, and then you learn from that experience to do better and continue to evolve. General Pant, I think I know we are towards the end of it, and October is a National Cyber Security Awareness Month, and it's a privilege to have you with us. What is your top message to the nation as a whole to increase cyber resilience, and how do we build a strong digital India on its path to become a 5 trillion digital economy?
Yeah, Keshav, it will be a short answer. And in today's new digitalized world, there are only two mantras for survival. One is personal hygiene, and the second is cyber hygiene. That's my major message to the nation. But just to elaborate on that, all around us there are 5 domains: land, air, sea, cyber, and space. And at a national level, all of them have to be protected. So we have, the army, paramilitary forces protecting the land borders, etc. But in cyberspace, all of you are soldiers in defending the cyberspace of the nation. Unlike the other domains where you have to wear a uniform, etc. So because the attack starts in 1 out of 100 cases, when he gets through and you just click on the wrong and the malware drops, etc. And that is how he does the lateral spread and the escalation of etc. So this is my main message, that please be very, very careful. And for the enterprises, the message is that please report the incidents, because somehow, for lack of fall of reputation or something, the incidents are not being reported, and that is causing more harm than good, because the same indicator of compromise, supposing it was reported, we would have immediately spread it around through our threat intel exchange, etc., to all the enterprises, and somebody else would have got saved from a similar attack. So that is very important. And finally, the cyber audit has to be taken very seriously, and it must be done. And please realize that the government is a partner in ensuring your security, which includes cyber security. That is my final message. Thank you.
No, thank you, General Pant. I think I really liked how you said the pandemic has taught us personal hygiene, and cyber security is teaching us cyber hygiene. And I think since we are so integratedly connected with tech and cyber world and the internet, that is something that I think all can learn from. And so thank you for sharing that perspective on how the policy will and the strategy that is shaping up will really change from where we are now to the next wave of our digital transformation journey. So thank you very much, Dr. Pal.